In the misty Appalachian mountains, Eleanor Ellie Walker was about to uncover a secret hidden for centuries. What began as a simple exploration of her newly purchased crumbling tower took a shocking turn when her clever cat, Whiskers, pawed at a hidden panel, revealing a priceless artifact. Ellie wasn't your typical recluse. She had spent years exploring forgotten sites, known for her keen eye and intuition. When Whiskers triggered the discovery, she stepped into a dangerous game of greed and moral choice. What began as curiosity became guardianship, and the mountain would never be the same. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Appalachian mountains stretched endlessly under a veil of morning mist, the fog curling around jagged ridges and slipping into the dense canopy below like silent, secretive tendrils. Eleanor Ellie Walker inhaled the crisp, earthy scent of wet leaves and moss, feeling the thrill of isolation settle deep into her chest. It'd been a long journey up winding dirt roads and rickety bridges, but finally she reached the tower she had read about in a forgotten ledger at the county archive. A crumbling relic, perched atop a small hill like an aging guardian of the forest. The tower seemed untouched for decades, maybe even a century. Ellie's hand tightened around the cracked leather of the deed. 75 cents. A laughable sum for something that radiated mystery and history. She remembered the bemused clerk at the local post office, muttering to himself as he stamped the ancient document. Folks these days, chasing dreams that'll rot in the dirt, but Ellie didn't care. The truth, she knew, was that history often disguised itself as decay, and those with the curiosity to see past the obvious were often the ones rewarded. Whiskers, her grey-striped cat with a small patch of white over his left eye, padded along the damp grass, ears twitching. The feline's instincts were unmatched, and Ellie had come to rely on Whiskers' intuition in more ways than one. He sniffed at the base of the tower, tail flicking, and padded ahead to the broken wooden door. Ellie followed slowly, boots crunching on loose gravel, savoring the solitude that came with being far from any road that carried more than the occasional car. The tower itself was a study in decay and tenacity. Moss-covered stones leaned at precarious angles, as though shrugging against the pull of time. Windows, long shattered, resembled jagged teeth, some of them blackened from decades of fire or smoke. The roof had largely surrendered to gravity, letting sunlight spill across the interior in uneven golden slivers. Even in ruin, it was mesmerizing. Each stone seemed to hum with history, telling stories of those who had lived, worked, and perhaps even died within these walls. Ellie pushed open the heavy door. It groaned in protest, a low sound that echoed through the empty halls and mingled with the wind, whistling through broken shutters. Dust rose in delicate clouds, illuminated by the shafts of sunlight piercing through the gaps. Whiskers padded ahead, confident, sniffing every nook and cranny, tail raised high. He paused at a section of floor near a collapsed wall, pawing at a pile of rubble with deliberate persistence. Ellie crouched beside him, brushing her fingers against a stone that seemed to resist her touch. The edge was carved in a pattern unlike the rest of the tower, subtle, almost imperceptible. A shiver ran down her spine. Could it be structural? Or was it a hidden compartment, a secret waiting for discovery? Her pulse quickened. She loved moments like these, the sense that history was pressing against her, waiting to be unearthed by someone with enough curiosity to notice. The locals had called the tower haunted or cursed, depending on who she asked. Children whispered stories of shadows moving inside. Adults joked about the eccentric buyers who came up the mountain chasing ghosts. Ellie had never believed in curses, but she understood the power of mystery, the way it demanded respect and attention. She set her pack down, unpacking her modest provisions, a worn blanket, notebooks, lanterns, and a small box of supplies to make the tower livable, if only temporarily. She wanted to explore without distraction, to let her senses absorb the silence and history around her. Climbing the spiral staircase to the upper floors, Ellie felt each step groan beneath her weight. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by sunlight streaming through cracks in the walls. Whiskers followed, graceful and silent, like a shadow she could always trust. When she reached the second floor, the air felt cooler, more ancient. A faint draught slipped through the stonework, carrying the scent of mildew and forest decay. The ceiling here had partially collapsed, allowing a view of the sky above. Rays of sunlight pierced the darkness, revealing faded murals on the walls, scenes of hunts, ceremonies, and gatherings that had long been forgotten. Ellie pressed her palm to the cold stone, imagining the lives that had unfolded here, the joy, the sorrow, the secrets. The tower felt like a vessel of human memory, waiting for someone willing to listen. Whiskers paused, ears flicking, eyes alert. He darted to a corner near a bricked-up section of the wall and pawed insistently at a loose stone. Ellie approached slowly. There was a faint outline, barely perceptible, etched into the surrounding masonry. Her pulse quickened again, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation, the kind that comes when you feel that a secret is within reach. As the afternoon stretched on, Ellie explored more of the tower. She discovered hidden nooks that could serve as storage, and a collapsed section of floor she would need to repair if she planned to spend any length of time here. Whiskers leapt onto broken beams, tail twitching, inspecting holes and ledges with uncanny intelligence. Every so often he would return to her side, brushing against her legs as if to say, "We're on to something." Ellie set up a small fire in the hearth, careful to avoid the cracked flue. The smoke spiraled upward, curling through the gaps in the roof and mixing with the scent of damp stone. She unpacked her notebooks and began sketching the tower's layout, jotting down observations about the carvings, the irregularities in the walls, the peculiar drafts that seemed to hum in certain areas. She paused frequently to watch Whiskers, noting his curiosity and subtle reactions, every twitch of the ears, every flick of the tail, every deliberate glance toward a shadowed corner. The day wore on, and the sun began to sink behind the peaks, casting the mountains in a molten gold that shifted to deep violet. Ellie could see the silhouettes of distant townspeople watching from the edges of the forest, murmuring to one another. She could feel their skepticism, their curiosity about the outsider who had bought a decrepit tower for less than $1, but she didn't mind their stares. She had spent her life charting her own path, often in solitude, often misunderstood. The tower felt like home already, a place where she could uncover stories long hidden and perhaps discover parts of herself she hadn't yet known. As evening fell, Ellie prepared a simple meal, the flickering fire casting dancing shadows across the walls. Whiskers curled beside her, purring softly, but his eyes remained alert. There was something in his behavior, an urgency, a quiet insistence that Ellie couldn't ignore. She traced the patterns on the stones he had pawed at, noting the faint indentation of a panel hidden within the wall. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this be just a coincidence, or was the cat leading her to something important? Hours passed. The tower settled into its nighttime rhythm, creaking beams, the whisper of wind, the occasional owl calling from the forest. Ellie wrapped herself in her blanket, notebook beside her, lantern casting a warm glow. Whiskers leapt onto her lap, nuzzling her neck as if lending courage for the unknown. Ellie stroked his fur, thinking of her grandfather, Edward Walker, whose journal she had found months earlier. He had always spoken of secrets waiting for the right person, of the responsibility that came with discovery. Perhaps this tower was one of those secrets left to test her curiosity, patience, and integrity. She leaned back, eyes closing for a moment, and allowed herself to imagine what might lie hidden within the tower's ancient stones. A loose brick here, a hollow there, perhaps a chamber unseen for generations. Perhaps an artifact, mystical and priceless, waiting for someone who could respect its history. The thought thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. It was the kind of anticipation that kept explorers awake at night. Hearts hammering with the promise of revelation. Then, as if responding to her thoughts, Whiskers leapt from her lap and darted toward the stone panel again, scratching at it with renewed determination. Ellie's pulse quickened. She knelt, examining the edges of the panel. A faint outline traced the shape of a small door, hidden in plain sight. Her fingers traced the seams, feeling for a latch, a catch, anything that would indicate a secret mechanism. The possibilities unfolded in her mind, each more extraordinary than the last. By the time the moon rose over the mountains, casting silver light through shattered windows, Ellie had prepared herself for what might come next. She secured her lantern, took a deep breath, and whispered to Whiskers, "All right, little one. Let's see what you found." The cat's eyes gleamed in the pale light, reflecting a mixture of intelligence, mischief, and anticipation. Together, they stood at the threshold of discovery, on the verge of uncovering a secret that had waited decades, perhaps centuries, to be revealed. The tower exhaled around them, ancient stones holding their breath, dust settling in expectation. Outside, the Appalachian mountains remained silent, watching, indifferent, yet somehow approving. Inside, Ellie felt a surge of determination, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She was ready. She would uncover whatever lay hidden, and she would do it with the loyalty and intuition of Whiskers by her side. This was the beginning of something larger than herself, a journey into history, mystery, and perhaps the magical heartbeat of the world itself. And somewhere, deep within the walls of the tower, the secrets waited, patient as stone, ready for the curious and brave. The moonlight filtered through the jagged windows, casting fragmented silver patterns across the worn stone floor. Ellie crouched by the panel Whiskers had discovered, her fingers tracing the faint outline where the stone met stone. Each subtle ridge and indentation felt deliberate, a design meant to conceal something extraordinary. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears, mingling with the distant rustle of the forest beyond the tower. Whiskers pawed again, sharper this time, his tail flicking with almost human insistence. Ellie felt the thrill of anticipation twist with a tight knot of anxiety. Whatever lay behind this wall was no ordinary secret. "All right, little guy," she whispered, brushing her fingers over the faint carvings. "Let's see what you've been leading me toward." She pressed gently, trying to shift the stone panel, and to her surprise, it moved. A hairline crack widened, then widened further as she pressed both hands against it. With a low, grinding sound, the panel gave way to reveal a narrow passageway, concealed for decades. Dust billowed outward, carried by a current she hadn't noticed before. Whiskers, immediately alert, darted inside, tail high, whiskers twitching. Ellie followed, crouching low, feeling the air change as she stepped into the chamber. It smelled of age, of stone and metal, of history long sealed away. Her lantern illuminated the interior, revealing walls lined with faintly glowing inscriptions and symbols carved into the rock. They shimmered subtly in the firelight, delicate lines that suggested a language long forgotten or a code meant for those capable of seeing beyond the ordinary. The air vibrated faintly, a hum she could feel rather than hear, as if the chamber itself recognized her presence. At the center of the room rested the artifact. It was unlike anything Ellie had ever seen. A small, intricate object, perfectly preserved despite the decay surrounding it. Its surface was etched with symbols that glimmered faintly in the lantern light, as though the stone itself was alive. She reached out, hesitating only a moment before her fingertips brushed the surface. A shock of energy, not painful but immediate and profound, ran through her hand, leaving her breathless. Whiskers mewed, brushing against her arm as though sharing in the awe of discovery. Her mind raced. This wasn't simply a piece of history. The object radiated power, a presence that felt both ancient and sentient. Ellie's instincts screamed at her to leave it untouched, to respect the centuries it had endured. But curiosity, tempered by years of solitary exploration, urged her closer. She circled the artifact, inspecting it from every angle. The carvings seemed to shift subtly when observed from different perspectives, revealing patterns she could almost comprehend but not fully. Suddenly, a vision flashed before her eyes, brief, fragmented. Her grandfather, Edward Walker, standing in the tower decades earlier, carefully arranging the stones and etching symbols into the walls. His eyes, sharp and knowing, seemed to pierce through time, guiding her toward the very chamber she now stood in. Ellie stumbled back, heart racing. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breath. Whiskers padded forward, nuzzling her leg, grounding her in the present. The reality of the artifact's potential hit her fully. This was no mere collectible. The object seemed tied to her family, to her lineage, and perhaps to something greater than history alone. She remembered stories Edward had whispered to her as a child, stories of hidden legacies, of objects imbued with knowledge and power, meant for those who could understand responsibility. The weight of that legacy pressed down on her. Mixing pride with fear, Ellie spent hours examining the artifact, documenting its features in her notebook, sketching the intricate carvings, and making careful notes about the chamber's architecture. Whiskers remained vigilant, sniffing at corners and occasionally letting out soft, interrogative mews. She noticed that the cat's behavior had shifted. He seemed almost protective, alerting her to subtle movements of air or sound she might have missed. As the night deepened, Ellie decided to test the artifact carefully. She traced her fingers along the etched symbols, whispering the phrases her grandfather had once murmured in her childhood memories. At first nothing happened. Then the inscriptions glowed faintly, the symbols rearranging themselves as if responding to her touch. A low vibration hummed through the stone floor, gentle but insistent. Ellie stepped back, eyes wide, realizing she was witnessing the artifact's dormant energy awaken. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. Could this object be dangerous? Could it attract attention she wasn't ready to handle? Already, the thought of treasure hunters, collectors, and academics she didn't know began to surface. She had spent her life avoiding attention, keeping to herself, and yet here she was, standing on the brink of something that could change everything. Whiskers leapt onto a stone pedestal near the artifact, eyes fixed, tail stiff with alertness. Even the cat seemed to sense the magnitude of what they had found. Ellie considered the practicalities. She needed to secure the chamber, to understand the artifact fully before revealing it to anyone. But her instincts warned her that secrecy would not be easy. Word traveled fast in the mountains, especially about strange discoveries and unusual visitors. She made a mental note: protect the artifact, protect herself, and observe before acting. As she moved to explore the rest of the chamber, she noticed faint markings on the walls, tiny etchings that formed a sequence, almost like a map. They hinted at further hidden areas, perhaps more artifacts or secret passages. Ellie felt a thrill that mingled with fear. The tower had more secrets than she had imagined, and it seemed determined to test her curiosity, intelligence, and courage. Hours passed in quiet examination. Ellie sketched every angle of the artifact, noted the glowing symbols, and even recorded the subtle vibrations she felt under her feet. Whiskers remained her constant companion, his presence a steadying force as she navigated the chamber's mysteries. Occasionally he would pause, ears twitching, eyes fixed on some unseen detail, reminding Ellie that discovery often demanded patience and observation beyond what a human could manage alone. Eventually, fatigue set in, and Ellie wrapped herself in her blanket, sitting beside the artifact at a respectful distance. Whiskers curled against her leg, purring softly, a comforting warmth against the chill of the stone floor. She allowed herself a rare moment of reflection, thinking of the journey that had brought her here, the betrayal she had left behind, the solitude she had embraced, and the drive to uncover forgotten history. The tower, the artifact, Whiskers, they were now intertwined with her destiny in ways she could not yet fully understand. She also reflected on the potential consequences. This discovery, while exhilarating, carried immense responsibility. Could she trust herself to safeguard it? What if outsiders came? What if she succumbed to the temptation of wealth or fame? The questions circled in her mind, demanding honest answers. Ellie realized that she was no longer simply an explorer. She was a guardian, a steward of something far older and more significant than herself. Sleep eventually overtook her, though dreams were restless and vivid. She saw visions of her grandfather guiding her through the tower, of symbols shifting and glowing under her touch, and of Whiskers leading her safely through dangers she could not yet name. Each dream left her with a sense of purpose and foreboding, as if the tower itself was whispering advice and warning in equal measure. When she awoke, the first light of dawn filtered through the cracked windows, painting the chamber in warm gold. Whiskers leapt from her side, already alert and moving toward the hidden panel. Ellie's heart raced. The cat had sensed something, perhaps more passages, more secrets awaiting discovery. She followed him, feeling both awe and nervous excitement. Every step in the tower was a step deeper into history, into mystery, into a journey that promised danger and wonder in equal measure. Ellie spent the morning examining the panel more closely. It was cleverly designed to blend with the wall, almost invisible, unless one knew what to look for. Whiskers' intuition had led her here, and she realized fully that he was more than a companion. He was a guide, a partner in exploration. Their bond, strengthened by trust and shared curiosity, was now crucial for what lay ahead. She also took time to reflect on the artifact itself. The carvings seemed to shift subtly when she observed them from different angles, a dynamic presence that suggested intelligence or responsiveness. Could it be connected to the visions she had experienced? Could it communicate, in some subtle way, with those who approached it with respect and curiosity? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more compelling than the last. By midday, Ellie had decided she needed to secure the chamber. She moved stones to block access to the panel, ensuring no accidental discoveries by passers-by. Whiskers assisted in his way, brushing against stones that needed adjusting, as though he understood the importance of the task. Together they worked methodically, establishing a perimeter and making notes in her journal about what had been found and what still required investigation. The artifact, resting at the center of the hidden chamber, now seemed to radiate a quiet energy that filled the space. Ellie could feel it in her bones, a hum of potential and history. She realized fully that her life had changed irrevocably. She was no longer a solitary explorer in the mountains. She was a guardian, a witness to something ancient and powerful. And the choices she made now would ripple far beyond the walls of the tower. As evening fell, Ellie lit a small fire in the chamber, careful not to disturb the artifact. The glow of the flames mingled with the subtle luminescence of the inscriptions, creating a surreal, almost magical atmosphere. She took a moment to breathe, to let the weight of her discoveries settle. Whiskers curled beside her, eyes alert, tail flicking. In that quiet companionship, Ellie felt both courage and resolve. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with curiosity, integrity, and the loyalty of her feline guide. The tower, once a forgotten relic, had awakened under her presence. And as she gazed at the artifact, Ellie knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test her in ways she could not yet imagine, morally, intellectually, and emotionally. With Whiskers by her side, she felt ready. The mysteries of the Appalachian tower and the secrets of her family lineage awaited, hidden just beyond the shadows, ready to be uncovered by a woman willing to look beyond the ordinary and into the extraordinary. The sun had barely risen over the Appalachian ridges when a distant rumble reached Ellie's ears. Birds scattered from the treetops, and the faint scent of leather and expensive cologne drifted on the crisp morning air. Ellie froze, instinctively scanning the tower's perimeter. Whiskers, normally curious but cautious, arched his back and hissed softly, a warning carried not just in sound, but in the precise tension of his body. Ellie's instincts, honed through years of solitude and navigating unpredictable terrain, told her this was no ordinary visitor. Moments later, a sleek black SUV wound its way up the narrow, rocky path. The vehicle stopped just beyond the edge of the tower's crumbling foundation. A man stepped out, tall and impeccably dressed despite the rugged surroundings. His suit was dark, sharply tailored, almost absurdly clean for the mountain morning. A wide-brimmed hat shaded his face, but Ellie could make out a hint of a smile, polished, confident, and almost predatory. Eleanor Walker. His voice was smooth, practiced, carrying both charm and a subtle threat. I'm Victor Reynolds. I believe we have mutual interests. Ellie's stomach tightened. She had heard whispers of Victor Reynolds in collector circles. Wealthy, ruthless, and relentless in his pursuit of rare artifacts. No one crossed him and remained unscathed. Her fingers instinctively curled around the notebook she carried, the one filled with sketches and notes of the artifact. She kept her voice steady, measured. Yes, and you are? Victor tipped his hat slightly, a gesture that might have been polite in another context, but here felt calculated. A connoisseur of history, much like yourself. I hear you've discovered something. Remarkable. He allowed a faint pause, letting the words hang in the air, testing Ellie's reaction. Whiskers darted between Ellie's legs, tail high, sensing her unease. Ellie straightened. I believe what I've found is my responsibility to protect. Victor's smile widened, though it didn't reach his eyes. Of course. I admire dedication, but consider, some artifacts, no matter how noble, are best appreciated with resources and knowledge that mere isolation cannot provide. His tone was smooth, almost persuasive, but Ellie detected the underlying menace. Is that a request or a threat? She asked, keeping her gaze steady. Victor chuckled softly. A gentle suggestion, perhaps. A proposition. He took a step closer, surveying the tower with an appraising eye, then returned his gaze to Ellie. I could offer you a considerable sum for what you've discovered. The artifact, the tower, everything. Think of it as a partnership. Ellie's pulse quickened. She had anticipated interest, even intrusion, but the boldness of this first encounter shocked her. She glanced down at Whiskers, who hissed at Victor, tail lashing. The cat's protective instincts mirrored her own determination. I'm not interested in selling. This isn't about money, she said firmly. Victor raised a brow, as if surprised and amused by her forthrightness. Ah, integrity, admirable, but consider the alternative: exposure, theft, loss. The mountains are full of opportunists, people who wouldn't hesitate to take what doesn't belong to them. Surely you wouldn't risk the artifact to chance? His words were smooth, but the implication was unmistakable. He could make that risk very real. Ellie's mind raced. She knew that the artifact's discovery would not stay secret for long. Word traveled quickly in local circles, and whispers often drew unwanted attention. Her heart pounded at the thought of what Victor Reynolds, with his resources and influence, might be capable of. Yet she also recognized that yielding to pressure, even subtle, would compromise her principles. She squared her shoulders. I appreciate the warning, she said, but the artifact stays where it belongs. Here, in this tower, until I can understand it fully and ensure it's protected. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, but he maintained the air of polite charm. Bold, very well. But do understand this, Miss Walker. Such discoveries attract attention. Not all of it. Benign, he paused, surveying her carefully. I do hope we can find a mutually beneficial arrangement eventually. But know this, I always get what I want. One way or another. Ellie's stomach churned. The warning was clear. He could and would return, and likely with more aggressive tactics. Whiskers, as if sensing the tension, rubbed against her legs, purring softly but alert. Ellie bent down, stroking his fur for reassurance, silently acknowledging the bond that had guided her through the tower's first mysteries. Victor took a deliberate step back, tipping his hat once more. I'll be in touch, Miss Walker. Consider this a courtesy call. With that, he returned to his vehicle, the engine rumbling to life, and disappeared down the narrow mountain path, leaving Ellie and Whiskers in a silence that felt charged. Almost electric, Ellie sank to the stone floor, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The artifact gleamed faintly in the morning light, as if it too had felt the tension, the threat. Whiskers pawed at the edge of the pedestal, tail flicking with a mix of curiosity and caution. Ellie's mind raced with questions. Who could she trust? How would she protect the artifact from someone as determined as Victor Reynolds? And most importantly, what had her grandfather intended when he left this hidden legacy? She spent the next few hours fortifying the hidden chamber. She shifted loose stones, reinforced weak supports, and took meticulous notes on the structure's vulnerabilities. Whiskers explored each corner with precision, alert to every subtle shift in the tower's interior. Together, they established a routine: patrol, observation, documentation, and quiet reflection. Every sound outside, every unusual movement, was met with sharp attention. As the day wore on, Ellie allowed herself brief moments to examine the artifact more closely. Its intricate carvings seemed to shimmer faintly when she wasn't looking directly at them, and she began to notice patterns that suggested not only historical significance, but also intention. Was the artifact meant to guide, to teach, or to test? The possibilities were dizzying. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders, heavier than the physical strain of moving through the crumbling tower. By late afternoon, Ellie's thoughts returned to Victor Reynolds. She couldn't shake the feeling that he had underestimated her, and that miscalculation could work to her advantage. She began strategizing: how to protect the artifact, how to anticipate further intrusions, and how to secure allies who shared her dedication to preservation rather than profit. Her instincts, honed through years of solitary exploration, told her that she needed knowledge, patience, and cleverness, not just strength, to safeguard what she had found. Hours later, as the sun dipped behind the ridges, casting long shadows across the tower, Ellie noticed a subtle shift in the artifact's glow. The symbols pulsed faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. Whiskers hissed softly, staring at the center of the chamber where the artifact rested. Ellie approached carefully, noting the pattern of the glow. It seemed to respond to her presence, her attention, and perhaps even her intent. The realization struck her. The artifact was more than a historical relic. It was responsive, almost alive in a way that defied logic. She recalled her grandfather's stories, fragments of caution and wisdom, now resonating with new urgency. Edward Walker had known that someone capable of understanding responsibility would find it. But he had also warned that others, less scrupulous. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story would come seeking its power. Victor Reynolds was not the only threat, she realized. The very nature of the artifact demanded vigilance, intelligence, and ethical resolve. That night, Ellie slept lightly, the artifact secured and Whiskers curled against her side. Her dreams were vivid, filled with shadows of the past, whispers of her grandfather, and fleeting glimpses of Victor Reynolds' determined face. In one fragment, she saw him navigating the tower with ease, exploiting weaknesses she hadn't even considered. She awoke with a start, heart-pounding, the echo of his warning lingering in her mind. By dawn, Ellie had resolved to take proactive measures. She began drafting a plan, securing the tower, documenting the artifact, and contacting experts she could trust. Every detail mattered: the placement of stones, the alignment of the chamber, even the pattern of light through the windows. Whiskers assisted, prowling silently, alert to changes in the environment that Ellie might miss. Throughout the day, Ellie reflected on the broader implications. This discovery, while exhilarating, was also a test of her courage, her morality, and her ability to navigate a world that often rewarded greed over integrity. Victor Reynolds had made his intentions clear, but she also realized that her choices now would define not just her future, but the fate of the artifact and the legacy of her family. Late in the afternoon, a breeze drifted through the broken windows, carrying the scent of the forest and a subtle, almost imperceptible energy from the artifact. Ellie touched it lightly again, feeling the pulse of power beneath her fingertips. Whiskers twined around her legs, purring with quiet insistence. Together, they stood in the chamber, guardians of a secret that spanned generations. And as shadows lengthened across the walls, Ellie knew one thing with certainty: Victor Reynolds would return, bolder and more dangerous. But she would be ready. The tower, the artifact, and the bond with her cat had become her shield, her guide, and her test. Every decision she made from this point forward would matter, not just for her, but for the hidden magic that had awaited centuries for someone worthy to uncover it. Ellie leaned back against the stone wall, notebook in hand, lantern casting soft light across her sketches. The artifact glimmered faintly, almost knowingly. Whiskers' ears twitched, eyes alert, ready to react at the slightest movement. Ellie allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had found the artifact, discovered its hidden chamber, and survived her first encounter with a man who might have been her undoing. But the story was far from over. She whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. "We've just begun, Whiskers. And whatever comes next, we face it together." The cat purred in response, a quiet affirmation of loyalty and shared purpose. The tower, once a forgotten relic, now pulsed with life, secrets, and the weight of history. And in the growing shadows of the Appalachian mountains, Ellie Walker braced herself for the challenges that Victor Reynolds and the artifact itself would inevitably bring. The morning fog clung stubbornly to the Appalachian ridges, curling through the trees and drifting over the tower's moss-covered stones. Ellie had spent the night poring over her notes, sketching the artifact from every angle, attempting to decipher the intricate carvings and symbols that seemed to shimmer in response to her gaze. Whiskers had remained at her side, occasionally pawing at the pages as if to remind her that some mysteries required more than mere observation. They required intuition. A sudden rustle from the path below the tower drew Ellie's attention. At first, she assumed it was a stray animal, one of the many that roamed the mountains, but then she noticed a figure emerging from the mist. She squinted, shading her eyes against the soft light of dawn. The figure was a woman, carrying a leather satchel bulging with what could only be presumed research materials. Her steps were deliberate, confident and measured, and there was an air of purpose in her posture that immediately set Ellie on alert. Eleanor Walker, the woman called, her voice carrying over the damp morning air. She paused at the edge of the tower's clearing, adjusting the strap of her satchel. "I'm Dr. Lindsay Harper. I specialize in early American relics, particularly those with unusual provenance." Ellie stood, brushing dust from her jeans, her mind racing. She had anticipated further interest in the artifact. Victor Reynolds had made that perfectly clear, but she had not expected an academic to arrive unannounced in the remote mountains. "Dr. Harper?" Ellie's voice was cautious but firm. "I've heard your name mentioned in a few journals. You're quite persistent, I gather." Dr. Harper smiled faintly, though her expression was tinged with weariness from travel. "I follow leads, and this one is exceptional." She gestured vaguely toward the tower, as if to encompass both the structure and the artifact hidden within. "I've been researching the Walker lineage and came across references to a mysterious object. Long thought lost." Her eyes sparkled, with the kind of intensity that only those truly devoted to their work possessed. Ellie weighed her options carefully. Trusting this stranger could be dangerous, yet she sensed a sincerity in Dr. Harper's approach, a contrast to the polished menace of Victor Reynolds. She took a measured step forward. "Then you've come to see it for yourself." Dr. Harper nodded, her gaze following Ellie's as they approached the tower entrance. "If you're willing, I'd like to examine the artifact, and more importantly, understand its context. Historical significance is often entwined with hidden dangers, especially in cases like yours." Whiskers, ever perceptive, circled the newcomer cautiously, her tail twitching with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Dr. Harper crouched slightly, holding out a hand. "I promise I mean no harm." Whiskers sniffed, paused, then with an almost imperceptible nod, allowed the woman's presence. Ellie noted this silently. Her cat's intuition had never been wrong. Inside the tower, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of aged stone. The hidden chamber awaited, shielded by the clever mechanics that her grandfather, Edward Walker, had designed. Ellie led Dr. Harper to the secret panel, revealing the chamber that had captivated her since discovery. The artifact rested on its pedestal, glowing faintly in the filtered light. Dr. Harper's eyes widened, not with greed, but with a reverent recognition of history. She moved closer, careful to maintain respectful distance, and studied the carvings. "Remarkable," she breathed. This is beyond anything I expected." The craftsmanship suggests not only early American origins, but also influences that are unusual, perhaps even mystical, Ellie swallowed. I've noticed odd things. The artifact seems to respond, sometimes to me, sometimes to Whiskers. I'm not sure if it's coincidence or something more. Dr. Harper's eyes sharpened, filled with the gleam of a scholar who had stumbled onto the extraordinary. Not coincidence. Objects like this, they're designed with intention. It's rare, but some were created to guide, to test, or even to protect knowledge. You're standing in a lineage of guardians, Miss Walker. The weight of the words pressed on Ellie. Her grandfather's warnings and the cryptic notes he left behind suddenly took on a more urgent clarity. Edward Walker had not simply hidden the artifact. He had entrusted it to someone capable of understanding both its power and its responsibility. And now that responsibility was hers. Dr. Harper continued, tracing the intricate symbols with her finger, careful not to touch the artifact directly. Many collectors, when faced with something like this, act impulsively. They covet it, display it, sell it. The consequences can be catastrophic, especially if the object interacts with forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Ellie nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of the situation. That's why I haven't let anyone see it. Not even Victor Reynolds. Her voice hardened at the mention of his name. He showed up yesterday, offering money, trying to convince me to hand it over. He won't stop. Dr. Harper's expression darkened. Reynolds is known for his obsession with rare artifacts. He doesn't care about history, only ownership and profit. You've done well to resist him, but you'll need more than determination to keep him at bay. She looked around the chamber, assessing its vulnerabilities. We'll need to consider physical security, concealment, and possibly even protective rituals, if the artifact's mystical qualities are as potent as I suspect. Ellie felt a shiver of unease. Her grandfather had left her clues, but even she had not anticipated the complexity of the forces she now faced. You mean the artifact could be dangerous? Dr. Harper nodded. Dangerous, yes, but also incredibly valuable, not in a monetary sense, but in what it can teach, preserve, and reveal. The key is understanding it, respecting it, and safeguarding it from those who would exploit it. Over the next few hours, the two women worked together to catalog the artifact, its inscriptions and the chamber's hidden mechanisms. Ellie shared her sketches and notes, while Dr. Harper cross-referenced her observations with historical texts and legends she carried in her satchel. Whiskers, now more comfortable with Dr. Harper's presence, darted between their legs, alert to any shifts in the tower's ancient structure. As the afternoon sun filtered through the cracked windows, casting elongated shadows across the stone floor, Ellie and Dr. Harper uncovered patterns in the inscriptions that suggested both a lineage and a set of instructions. It became clear that the artifact was intended not merely to be possessed, but to guide its keeper in specific actions. Tests of character, moral judgment, and guardianship. This isn't just history, Dr. Harper murmured, tracing a delicate pattern with her finger. It's a map of responsibility. And your grandfather clearly trusted you to follow it. Ellie felt the weight of that trust, pressing down on her chest. She thought of the lonely nights in the tower, the exhilaration of discovery, and the creeping fear of those who might come for the artifact. Her hands rested lightly on Whiskers' fur, drawing strength from the unwavering bond they shared. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted quietly. Dr. Harper placed a reassuring hand on Ellie's shoulder. Readiness is a luxury few of us ever truly have. You've already demonstrated courage and wisdom. The rest we'll figure out together. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden movement in the trees outside, a subtle rustling that carried the unmistakable precision of human intent. Ellie's pulse quickened. Victor Reynolds, he had returned, despite her hopes that he would wait. But he hadn't come alone. She could sense the presence of calculated observation, the kind that came from experience, wealth, and single-minded determination. Time to prepare, Dr. Harper whispered, her tone now edged with urgency. We'll need to secure the chamber, reinforce the hidden passages, and perhaps create diversions. "Reynolds is clever, but we're prepared." Ellie nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. Together, they moved through the tower, fortifying doors, adjusting loose stones, and employing subtle mechanisms her grandfather had left behind as protective measures. Whiskers patrolled alongside, his instincts now attuned to the imminent danger. By evening, the preparations were complete. The artifact glimmered faintly, almost as if acknowledging the efforts to protect it. Ellie stood beside it, feeling the immense responsibility of guardianship settle firmly on her shoulders. Dr. Harper studied her, eyes reflecting both admiration and concern. "You've inherited more than an artifact, Ellie," Dr. Harper said softly. "You've inherited a legacy, and with it comes the challenge of discerning who deserves trust and who does not." Ellie glanced at Whiskers, whose ears twitched in alertness. "I suppose the test has only just begun," she replied, determination threading her voice. As night fell over the Appalachian mountains, the tower seemed to breathe, alive with history, mystery, and the anticipation of the coming storm. Ellie, Dr. Harper, and Whiskers settled into the chamber, their bond solidifying through shared purpose and silent understanding. Outside, the shadows shifted, carrying the promise of challenges yet to come, and the certainty that the choices they made now would resonate far beyond the tower's crumbling stones. Ellie felt a quiet resolve take root within her. She would protect the artifact, honor her grandfather's legacy, and face whatever Victor Reynolds or any other threat might bring. And as she watched the last light of day fade across the mountain peaks, she understood that this was not merely a battle for possession, but a test of character, morality, and courage. In that moment, she realized something profound. She was no longer alone in the mountains. She had an ally in Dr. Harper, a partner in Whiskers, and a purpose that extended beyond herself. And whatever lay ahead, challenges, confrontations, and revelations, she would meet them not with fear, but with the fierce determination of someone entrusted with a legacy far greater than mere wealth or notoriety. The artifact pulsed faintly, whispering secrets of the past, guidance for the present, and warnings for the future. Ellie understood its message. Vigilance, integrity, and respect were paramount. And as she stood there, heart steady, she felt ready to face the next wave of danger, ready to confront Victor Reynolds, and ready to uncover the deeper mysteries her grandfather had left behind. The mountains held their breath, and so did she. The morning light filtered through the tower's broken windows, casting long streaks across the dust-speckled floor. Ellie and Dr. Harper had spent the night cataloguing the artifact's inscriptions, attempting to decipher the cryptic guidance left behind by Edward Walker. Whiskers, ever vigilant, patrolled the chamber, pausing occasionally to gaze at the faint glow emanating from the artifact, as though acknowledging its guardians. The calm of the morning, however, was deceptive. A new presence was approaching, one that neither of them had anticipated. Ellie first noticed him as a shadow stretching along the path leading to the tower. A man emerged from the mist, moving with a confident, almost predatory grace. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried a leather satchel slung over one arm, the strap frayed from use. There was an easy charm in his posture, but it was tempered by the sharpness in his eyes, a mixture of calculation and audacity that immediately put Ellie on edge. "You must be Eleanor Walker," the man called, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Name's Gavin Cooper. I've been following rumors about a certain discovery in these parts." Ellie's hand instinctively went to the small dagger she kept at her belt, not for attack, but for protection. "And you are?" she asked cautiously, her tone polite but firm. "I don't know if I want to meet anyone else about this artifact just yet." Gavin's smile was easy, almost disarming. "Relax, I'm not here to take it by force. Not immediately, at least." He tilted his head, studying her reaction. "I'm an adventurer, a seeker of knowledge, sometimes profit, but I've got a vested interest in ensuring rare finds like yours don't disappear into the wrong hands." Ellie narrowed her eyes. "Profit?" she echoed, her voice wary. "That sounds convenient." Gavin chuckled lightly, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. Convenient? Maybe honest? Sometimes. The world isn't as black and white as some historians would like to believe, Miss Walker. Choices have consequences, but not all consequences are predictable. That's what makes discovery exciting. Dr. Harper, standing behind Ellie, assessed the man with a mixture of suspicion and professional curiosity. An adventurer, she said flatly, which is code for someone who often skirts the line between legality and opportunism. How did you hear about the artifact? Gavin's smile broadened. Let's call it networking. Word travels fast among those who chase legends. But don't worry, I'm not like Victor Reynolds. I'm not here to buy it outright. I'm here to see if we can collaborate, perhaps. Ellie's pulse quickened. Collaboration with an unpredictable figure like Gavin was a risk, but it could also provide a buffer against Victor, who she now knew would stop at nothing. Collaboration means trust, she said slowly. Something I'm not sure I can afford to extend right now. Gavin's eyes sparkled with a mixture of challenge and amusement. Fair enough. Trust is earned, not given, and I don't expect it immediately. But consider this. I can help you protect what you've found. I can navigate the world outside these mountains. Victor Reynolds isn't patient, and he's certainly not polite. 2 heads are better than 1, don't you think? Dr. Harper interjected, her tone firm. And why should we trust you? How do we know you're not here for the same reason as Reynolds, to claim the artifact for personal gain? Gavin's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of seriousness crossing his features. I've made mistakes in the past. Some for profit, some for curiosity. But I've learned a few lessons. The wrong hands can't touch this artifact, not if I have anything to say about it. And if we're honest, you could use someone like me who isn't bound by the same rules or expectations. Someone who can act when necessary. Ellie considered his words. She could sense his experience, the kind of resourcefulness that came from years of chasing legends, evading danger, and surviving situations most people would never imagine. Yet the question remained, could she risk inviting a morally ambiguous adventurer into her sanctuary? Before she could respond, Gavin's gaze shifted to the artifact. His eyes lingered on the inscriptions, the intricate carvings that seemed to shimmer under the morning light. Incredible, he murmured almost to himself. The craftsmanship, the history, and the latent power. Whoever created this had intentions far beyond what most historians would ever comprehend. Your grandfather was no fool, Eleanor. He left it in the hands of someone capable of understanding its significance. Ellie felt a twinge of pride and fear. Her grandfather's trust had never been questioned in her mind, but now she faced external pressures she had never anticipated. You speak as though you know him, she said cautiously. Gavin's smile softened, becoming almost nostalgic. I don't, but I know people like him. Guardians of legacies, protectors of knowledge. It's rare. And now you carry that burden. Dr. Harper's eyes narrowed, studying Gavin's demeanor carefully. Rare, perhaps, but dangerous as well. The presence of another party, especially one whose motives are uncertain, adds risk. I trust you understand that? Gavin inclined his head. I do, and I don't intend to increase the risk. Quite the opposite, actually. Think of me as a shield with an agenda that aligns, at least for now, with yours. Ellie felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. For the first time, she considered the possibility that Gavin could be a strategic ally rather than a liability. Still, caution was paramount. All right, she said finally. You can stay for now. But any sign that you're here for anything other than protection, and you're out. Gavin's grin returned, more playful this time. Deal. I like a clear line in the sand. With the tentative alliance formed, the trio, Ellie, Dr. Harper, and Gavin, focused on fortifying the tower and understanding the artifact. Gavin's expertise in navigating treacherous terrain, evading detection, and improvising solutions proved invaluable. He explored the tower with a keen eye, identifying weak points in the structure, potential access routes, and hidden vulnerabilities that Ellie and Dr. Harper had overlooked. Meanwhile, Whiskers remained alert, weaving between their legs, his instincts signaling subtle changes in the artifact's energy. At one point, the cat leapt onto the pedestal, pawing gently at the glowing inscriptions. Ellie watched in awe as the light responded, intensifying slightly under Whiskers' touch. Gavin knelt beside the pedestal, his expression one of fascination. "Your cat has a connection to it," he murmured. "That's unusual. The artifact might respond to intent, presence, or even consciousness." "Fascinating," Dr. Harper frowned slightly. "Intent, consciousness. We need to be cautious. Objects like this can manipulate perception or amplify emotions. I've seen historical cases where mishandling led to disaster." Gavin's gaze remained fixed on the artifact. "I'm aware. But sometimes, the right interaction can reveal information hidden to ordinary observation. That's what makes discovery exciting and dangerous." Ellie felt a surge of both excitement and fear. The artifact was no longer merely a historical object. It was alive in some sense, responsive to their presence and intent. Every choice carried weight. Every movement had consequences. Over the next several hours, they worked tirelessly. Gavin taught Ellie subtle techniques to reinforce the hidden chamber's mechanisms. Using everyday objects to create clever deterrents, Dr. Harper meticulously documented the artifact's inscriptions, comparing them to historical texts and noting anomalies that hinted at its mystical properties. Ellie balanced both efforts, learning to trust Gavin's practical knowledge while grounding their actions in Dr. Harper's scholarly insights. As the afternoon waned, Ellie noticed a shift in Gavin's demeanor. The casual charm, the playful risk-taking, gave way to a focused intensity. He moved deliberately, analyzing the artifact with a mix of respect and curiosity. "You're serious about protecting this," he said quietly, glancing at Ellie. "Not everyone would take such care. Most people would sell it or display it for recognition." Ellie met his gaze, feeling the truth in his observation. "It's not just an object," she said. "It's a responsibility. My grandfather trusted me with it. I won't betray that trust." Gavin nodded, a hint of admiration in his expression. "Good. That makes my job easier and more interesting." Evening settled over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and purple. The tower, once a solitary relic, now buzzed with the energy of human presence, collaboration, and cautious vigilance. Whiskers perched atop a ledge, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, as if keeping watch over both the artifact and its protectors. Ellie reflected on the day's events. The arrival of Gavin had introduced uncertainty, but also a new kind of strength. His experience, cunning, and willingness to operate in morally grey areas provided a counterbalance to Dr. Harper's strict adherence to ethics and her own cautious intuition. Together, they formed a fragile but potentially powerful alliance. As night fell, Ellie stood at the top of the tower, gazing at the mist-shrouded mountains. The artifact pulsed faintly below, a reminder of the stakes, the power, and the responsibility she carried. Victor Reynolds remained a looming threat, unpredictable and relentless, but now she was no longer alone. She had allies, a cat whose instincts were unmatched, and a sense of purpose that grounded her amidst uncertainty. The wind whispered through the broken windows, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Ellie felt a quiet determination settle over her. The challenges ahead would be formidable, but she was ready to navigate the treacherous interplay of greed, morality, and discovery, and somewhere deep within the artifact's glow, she sensed her grandfather watching, guiding, and urging her forward. She was not merely the inheritor of an object. She was the steward of a legacy, a guardian of secrets that stretched back through generations, and a participant in a story that was far from complete. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new tests, perhaps in the form of Victor's machinations, the artifact's mysterious powers, or the moral dilemmas that had already begun to surface. But tonight, in the quiet company of Dr. Harper, Gavin, and Whiskers, Ellie allowed herself a moment of clarity and resolve. The tower was no longer just a crumbling relic. It was a fortress, a laboratory, and a sanctuary, and she, Eleanor Walker, was ready to meet whatever came next. The dawn broke slowly over the Appalachian mountains. the mist curling through the valleys like silent spectral fingers. Ellie Walker sat cross-legged on the rough wooden floor of the tower's main chamber, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings on the artifact's base. Whiskers perched nearby, tail flicking in quiet agitation, eyes fixed on the faint pulsing light emanating from the ancient object. There was a strange rhythm to its glow, almost like a heartbeat, and Ellie felt it resonate deep within her chest. Dr. Lindsay Harper adjusted her glasses, leaning over the artifact with a small magnifying glass. "The inscriptions are even more complex than I initially thought," she murmured. "There's a pattern here that corresponds to astrological alignments, something only visible at certain times. And if the legends are true, the artifact may respond to the intent of the observer." Ellie's pulse quickened. "Respond how?" she asked, wary yet fascinated. Dr. Harper hesitated. "We don't know for certain. There are historical accounts of objects like this, influencing perception, even amplifying emotional states. Some suggest that powerful artifacts could communicate visions or memories from the past. Others claim it could reveal glimpses of the future, but with consequences. Mishandling it could be dangerous." Whiskers meowed softly, circling the pedestal, pawing gently at the light. Ellie followed her cat's lead, placing a hand over the glowing inscriptions. A sudden warmth spread through her palm, traveling up her arm in a shiver that was both thrilling and unnerving. Her vision blurred, and for a moment she saw the tower as it had once been, vibrant, alive, filled with her grandfather Edward Walker's presence. She could almost hear him moving through the halls, adjusting books, whispering instructions in a voice she had long forgotten. "Ellie." Dr. Harper's voice brought her back. "Are you all right?" Ellie pulled her hand back, blinking rapidly. I think it's showing me something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's like memories or visions of the tower of my grandfather, of things I don't fully understand." Dr. Harper's eyes widened. "It's responding to you." Before Ellie could respond, the sudden creak of the front door echoed through the tower. Gavin Cooper emerged from the shadows, carrying a small pack. His expression was serious, almost tense, a stark contrast to the playful charm he usually displayed. "We've got company," he said. "Victor Reynolds isn't far behind." Ellie's stomach tightened. "How close?" "Closer than I like," Gavin replied. "He's got eyes on this area, and he's not the kind to wait politely. We need to be ready." The air grew heavy with tension as the 3 humans and 1 vigilant feline prepared themselves. Ellie moved to barricade the lower doors with broken furniture, while Gavin checked the perimeter through broken windows, and Dr. Harper catalogued their positions relative to the artifact. Whiskers prowled the shadows, ears twitching, sensing danger that Ellie could only feel as a prickling tension in the air. Hours passed. The sun climbed, then dipped, casting long, distorted shadows across the crumbling stone walls. The artifact's glow shifted subtly with the passage of time, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Ellie noticed faint symbols illuminating along the edges of the inscriptions, ones she hadn't seen before. Each symbol appeared to respond to her heartbeat, flickering as her pulse raced faster with every passing moment of vigilance. Then came the first signs of Victor Reynolds. A shadow flickered along the tree line outside. Ellie froze, heart pounding, as Gavin placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Stay calm," he whispered. "He's watching, waiting for an opening." Dr. Harper's voice was barely audible. "We need to decide. Do we confront him directly or prepare a trap? The artifact may react unpredictably to him." Ellie's mind raced. Confrontation could be dangerous. Yet the artifact's mystical aura seemed to be amplifying her awareness, heightening her senses. She could feel subtle shifts in the air, the faintest pressure changes, indicating movement outside. Whiskers leapt onto a window ledge, tail lashing, fur bristling. Hours turned into tense standoffs, with Victor testing every entry point, trying doors, attempting to peer through windows. Each attempt made the artifact flare, the room lighting up with another worldly intensity. Whiskers leapt from one corner to another, keeping his eyes fixed on the intruder, as if trying to predict his every move. During a brief lull, Gavin crouched near Ellie. "He's persistent but predictable," he said quietly. "We've seen enough to anticipate his moves. We can use the tower's layout to our advantage." Ellie nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She moved through the tower like a shadow, repositioning furniture, reinforcing weak floorboards, and ensuring that the artifact remained hidden. Each step was deliberate, measured, every decision weighted with both ethical and physical stakes. Suddenly, Victor found a partially collapsed window and attempted entry. Whiskers hissed, leapt, and knocked over a stack of crates, creating a loud crash. Victor paused, startled, and for a fleeting moment the artifact's glow surged violently, illuminating the entire chamber. Ellie felt the energy coursing through her, connecting her to her grandfather, to Whiskers, to the very essence of the tower. "I told you, Reynolds," Ellie said, voice steady. "This isn't yours to take," Victor sneered, his charm replaced by raw aggression. "Don't test me, Walker. You have no idea what you're dealing with." The artifact flared again, and Ellie caught another vision. Images of her grandfather protecting the artifact. Guiding hands, hidden compartments, and warnings left in cryptic notes scattered throughout the tower. Edward Walker's wisdom was tangible, grounding her in the chaos. Gavin moved swiftly, intercepting Victor as he tried to force the window open. "Back off," he growled. "You're not taking anything today." Victor's eyes narrowed, his attention shifting between the two humans and the mysterious feline that seemed to have an uncanny control over the environment. He hesitated, sensing the danger in the artifact's energy, but his greed was relentless. "You think you can stop me? I've faced worse than a mountain woman and her friends." Ellie took a deep breath. "This isn't about strength or confrontation," she said softly yet firmly. "This is about respect, respect for history, for legacy, and for life itself." The artifact pulsed violently, responding to her conviction. Whiskers hissed, leapt onto the pedestal, and batted at the glowing inscriptions. Victor stumbled back, shielding his eyes as the tower seemed to hum with an energy that transcended the physical world. For a moment, time itself seemed suspended. The mist outside thickened, curling into strange shapes that hinted at long-forgotten spirits and echoes of the past. Ellie felt the presence of her grandfather, guiding her, steadying her, urging her to protect the artifact at all costs. Victor retreated momentarily, realizing the futility of a direct assault. "This isn't over," he spat, his voice echoing through the tower. "I'll be back, Walker. You haven't seen the last of me." As he vanished into the mist, Ellie collapsed to her knees, heart pounding, body trembling with both fear and exhilaration. Whiskers leapt into her lap, purring softly, a grounding presence amid the chaos. Dr. Harper placed a hand on Ellie's shoulder. "You did it," she said, voice tinged with awe. "You protected it. And you learned its power. But we have to remain vigilant. He'll return." Gavin nodded, scanning the misty forest beyond the tower. "We've bought time. That's all we can do for now. But he won't give up. And neither can we." Ellie looked at the artifact, still pulsing faintly beneath the layers of concealment. She felt a profound responsibility, not just to her grandfather, not just to history, but to the very essence of the artifact itself. She had glimpsed its power, felt its connection to the past, and understood the moral imperative it imposed. As night fell, the tower settled into a tense quiet. The mountains stood silent around them, shrouded in mist and mystery. Whiskers curled against Ellie's side, purring, a small but constant reminder that she was not alone in her guardianship. In that moment, Ellie realized the true scope of her journey. The artifact was more than an object. It was a test of character, a measure of integrity, and a beacon connecting generations. She had faced greed, danger, and the unknown, and emerged with clarity and resolve. The tower was no longer just a crumbling relic. It was a living testament to history, magic, and human responsibility, a sanctuary that demanded courage, wisdom, and heart. And Ellie Walker, with Whiskers by her side, was ready to meet whatever trials the artifact, and those who coveted it, would bring next. Outside, the mist rolled through the valleys, carrying the echo of promises, threats, and possibilities yet to unfold. Inside, the artifact glimmered softly, a heartbeat in the darkness, awaiting the choices of its guardian, and Ellie knew, with absolute certainty, that she would not fail. The first hints of dawn painted the Appalachian mist in pale streaks of gold, illuminating the tower in a soft, spectral glow. Ellie Walker crouched behind a partially collapsed wall, heart racing as she watched the forest beyond the crumbling windows. Whiskers perched on a ledge above, tail flicking nervously. The artifact pulsed faintly beneath the layers of concealment she and Dr. Harper had improvised. "They're moving in," Gavin whispered, pressing his ear to the stone floor as if listening to the vibrations of the approaching threat. "Reynolds isn't alone this time. He brought men." Ellie swallowed hard. Her mind raced through every possible contingency. The artifact's energy was unpredictable, and Victor Reynolds's obsession made him dangerously reckless. They had no choice but to confront him or risk losing the priceless object forever. A sudden rustle in the underbrush signaled the beginning of the chase. Victor Reynolds emerged from the tree line, flanked by two burly men with an aura of intimidation and practiced coordination. Their eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the tower as if already measuring the odds of conquest. Victor's polished charm was gone, replaced by predatory intensity. "Ellie Walker," he called, voice echoing across the clearing. "Hand over the artifact. I won't ask again." Ellie gritted her teeth. "It's not yours," she shouted back, "and you're not walking away with it." A tense pause followed, broken by Whiskers leaping from the ledge onto the closest henchman. The man stumbled, giving Ellie and Gavin precious seconds. They moved swiftly, securing barricades and pushing loose rubble to obscure entry points. Dr. Harper stood near the hidden pedestal, clutching the artifact's protective casing, eyes wide with both fear and determination. Victor advanced, calculating their movements with the cold precision of a predator. "Do you think a few barricades and a cat can stop me?" he sneered. "You're naive, Walker." "Very naive." Gavin's jaw tightened. "He underestimates us. That's his mistake." The first skirmish erupted when Victor's men tried to force open the tower's east entrance. Whiskers darted through the shadows, knocking over debris and creating a cacophony of noise that disoriented the intruders. Ellie seized the moment, moving with careful stealth to a vantage point where she could observe and direct. "Keep calm," she whispered to Dr. Harper, who nodded, tightening her grip on the artifact. "Every move matters." The intruders faltered, cursing as they stumbled over rubble and uneven stone floors. Ellie's pulse raced, not from fear, but from adrenaline and the weight of responsibility pressing down like the mountain mist itself. She could feel the artifact thrumming beneath her fingers, responding to the tension, the stakes, the emotions swirling around it. Victor's voice cut through the chaos. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Walker. That object isn't just history, it's power." Ellie clenched her jaw. "And that's exactly why it doesn't belong to you." A sudden, sharp glare from the artifact's glow intensified, as if echoing her words. Ellie felt her grandfather's presence, Edward Walker's protective spirit, guiding her movements and bolstering her courage. She realized that the tower itself, the walls, the floors, were allies, witnesses to centuries of secrecy and guardianship. Every loose stone, every creaking timber could be leveraged in their defense. Gavin moved to intercept Victor as he attempted a direct approach. "Step away," Gavin warned, placing himself between Victor and the artifact. The two men locked eyes, a tense standoff that promised violence. Victor lunged and Gavin sidestepped, shoving him into a pile of fallen rubble. Ellie seized the moment to adjust the barricade over the hidden chamber. Whiskers hissed and arched, warning of another approach. Sure enough, one of Victor's henchmen had found a side entrance. Ellie reacted instinctively, kicking a loose stone toward the intruder's feet. He slipped, giving her enough time to tip a heavy bookshelf, creating a barrier. The artifact pulsed brighter with each act of defense, illuminating the chamber with a strange, almost sentient energy. Dr. Harper's voice trembled with excitement and fear. "It's reacting to our intent. Look, when we protect it, it glows. When they approach with aggression, it flares." Ellie nodded, understanding the depth of the connection. The artifact was not merely an object to be preserved. It was a force that mirrored the moral intentions of those around it. Her resolve solidified. She would not allow greed or malice to claim it. The chase intensified as Victor realized brute force would not suffice. He retreated slightly, circling the tower to find an alternative path. Ellie, Gavin, and Dr. Harper used this pause to reposition. They moved silently through hidden stairways and narrow corridors, using their intimate knowledge of the tower's layout to stay ahead. Whiskers led the way, instinctively guiding them towards safer positions while anticipating the intruder's moves. Victor's frustration was palpable. "You think hiding in that old relic will save you?" He spat. "I will have it, Walker, no matter the cost." Ellie's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "Then you'll have to try harder than that." Hours passed in a tense, almost surreal rhythm. The sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows that merged with the mist rolling down the mountain. The tower became a labyrinthine battlefield, every corridor a potential trap, every creaking floorboard a strategic advantage. Whiskers' agility and intuition proved invaluable, intercepting small threats, alerting Ellie to danger, and even subtly manipulating the intruder's movements. At one critical moment, Victor cornered Ellie near the top of the tower's spiral staircase. He reached out, hand trembling with greed. "Give it to me!" he shouted, eyes blazing with obsession. Ellie stepped back, aware that one misstep could spell disaster. She glanced at the artifact hidden just beneath layers of rubble. Its glow intensified, resonating with her fear, courage, and moral conviction. She felt Edward Walker's presence once more guiding her hand. "Not today," Ellie whispered. She kicked a loose stone down the staircase, causing Victor to stumble, buying precious seconds. Whiskers leapt, landing on Victor's shoulder, claws lightly scratching his jacket. He cursed and swatted at the cat, but the distraction was enough. Gavin seized the opportunity, tackling Victor and forcing him down the narrow steps. The two struggled, their weight threatening to send them tumbling into the chamber below. Ellie's heart raced as she watched, knowing the consequences could be catastrophic. Dr. Harper, clutching the artifact, whispered urgently, "It's responding to your courage, Ellie. Focus, protect it." Ellie took a deep breath, centering herself amidst the chaos. The artifact's glow now surrounded the trio, a protective aura that seemed to stabilize the tower itself. Victor fought, but the combined force of Ellie's resolve, Gavin's intervention, and the artifact's mystical energy overwhelmed him. Finally, he broke free, scrambling back to the staircase landing. For a moment, all was still. The intruders paused, sensing that they had underestimated the tower, the artifact, and its guardians. Victor's eyes met Ellie's, a mixture of fury and grudging respect. "This isn't over," he growled, retreating into the mist with his men in tow. Ellie sank to her knees, heart pounding, adrenaline flooding every vein. Whiskers leapt onto her lap, purring, a calming presence amid the remnants of chaos. Dr. Harper and Gavin stood nearby, catching their breath, eyes wide with relief and awe. Ellie looked around the tower. The aftermath of the confrontation etched into the walls, scattered rubble, overturned furniture, and the lingering glow of the artifact. She realized the truth of her role. She was not merely a passive observer, but an active guardian. Every choice, every act of courage, every moral decision had shaped the outcome. Dr. Harper approached, her voice soft but firm. "You've done more than protect history, Ellie. You've upheld its integrity. That's not something everyone is capable of." Gavin nodded, brushing dust from his sleeves. "And you've shown me what it means to truly care about something beyond personal gain. I underestimated you, and the tower. But I won't forget it." Ellie stroked Whiskers' fur, feeling the weight of the day settle in her chest. "We've bought time," she said quietly. "But he'll return. Victor Reynolds doesn't give up easily." The artifact pulsed gently, as if affirming her words. It had endured centuries, witnessed greed, malice, and wonder, and now it had chosen guardians who respected its power and history. Night fell over the mountains, the mist thickening once again. The tower, battered but standing, exuded an almost sentient presence, a fortress, a sanctuary, and a guardian of secrets. Ellie knew that the confrontation was far from over, but for the first time she felt an unshakable confidence. She and her companions had faced greed and danger and emerged stronger, bonded not only by circumstance, but by shared purpose and moral conviction. As she gazed out over the misty valleys, Whiskers nestled against her shoulder, Ellie felt the full magnitude of her responsibility. The artifact was more than a relic. It was a living testament to the choices of those who came before and those who would come after, and she would protect it, no matter the cost. The mountains whispered around her, carrying echoes of challenges past and warnings of trials yet to come. But inside the tower, amidst the ruins and shadows, Ellie Walker felt a profound clarity. She was not merely surviving, she was guarding history, magic, and the delicate balance between human ambition and ethical duty. Victor Reynolds might return. The artifact's mysteries might deepen, and the challenges ahead could be formidable. But Ellie knew one immutable truth: courage, loyalty, and moral integrity were forces as powerful as any magic, capable of shaping destinies, protecting treasures, and forging bonds that no greed could sever. And with Whiskers at her side, she was ready for whatever came next. The first light of dawn seeped through the tower's shattered windows, casting long golden beams across the uneven stone floors. Ellie Walker sat cross-legged near the artifact's protective casing, Whiskers curled lazily beside her, tail flicking occasionally in silent contentment. The night's confrontation with Victor Reynolds had left them all drained, but a profound sense of accomplishment radiated through the room. The tower, battered and worn, felt alive in a way it never had before, as if it recognized that its guardians had passed the first test of loyalty, courage, and ethical resolve. Dr. Lindsay Harper carefully inspected the artifact, her eyes scanning every intricate carving, every mysterious symbol. Her fingers hovered just above the surface, reverent yet analytical. "It's remarkable," she said softly, almost to herself, "not just in age or rarity, but in the way it responds to intention. I've read legends, Ellie, but experiencing this, it's unlike anything I imagined." Ellie nodded, still absorbing the events of the previous night. The adrenaline that had driven her through the chase and confrontation was slowly ebbing, replaced by a quiet clarity. She traced the edges of the artifact's casing with her fingers, feeling the hum of energy beneath her touch. "I know, I can feel it too. And I know it's not just about protection, it's about understanding, about responsibility." Gavin Cooper, leaning against a collapsed wall, let out a low whistle. "You know, I didn't expect to find myself caring this much about a piece of history, or a crumbling tower for that matter." He chuckled wryly, brushing dust from his jacket. "But seeing what you've done here, I get it. The stakes, the moral weight. It's not just about money or fame. It's about legacy." Ellie glanced at him, a faint smile breaking her solemn expression. "It's more than that. It's about preserving something that's bigger than any of us. Something that connects the past to the present, and maybe even to the future." Whiskers stretched and hopped onto Ellie's lap, nuzzling her neck. The little cat had been the catalyst for everything, the discovery, the chase, the survival. Ellie scratched behind Whiskers' ears, whispering, "You've earned every bit of credit, little one." Dr. Harper cleared her throat, drawing their attention. "We need a plan for long-term preservation. The artifact can't remain here indefinitely. It's too significant, too dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. But it also deserves to be in a place where it's protected, respected, and studied responsibly." Ellie's thoughts immediately turned to her grandfather, Edward Walker, whose careful planning had led her to this moment. She remembered the hidden compartments, the cryptic notes, the subtle guidance embedded in the tower itself. He had left her not just an artifact, but a responsibility, a moral compass she could follow. "I think I know where it should go," Ellie said finally. "Not a museum, not a collector's vault. It needs a sanctuary, somewhere hidden, but accessible to those who truly respect its value. Somewhere that honors history, magic, and guardianship. Gavin raised an eyebrow. Sounds noble, but also complicated. You're thinking like a caretaker of the past, Ellie nodded. Exactly. It's bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than money, bigger than fame. This is about trust, our trust, and the trust of those who came before us. Dr. Harper smiled faintly. I can help with the logistics. There are private historical societies, archival facilities, secure ethical spaces, but it will require secrecy and discretion. Ellie's gaze fell on the artifact, still pulsing faintly, as if responding to her thoughts. She could feel its energy humming in harmony with her own heartbeat. Then that's what we'll do. We'll create a place worthy of it. And until then, it stays here, protected. The decision settled over them like a soft, reassuring blanket. For the first time since discovering the hidden chamber, Ellie felt a sense of peace. The tower was no longer a crumbling relic. It was a sanctuary, a guardian post, and a testament to the enduring power of responsibility, courage, and moral clarity. Over the next several days, they set about implementing their plan. Dr. Harper documented every detail of the artifact's history, cataloguing its inscriptions, physical composition, and the subtle effects it seemed to have on its surroundings. Gavin assisted in reinforcing the tower's hidden chambers, setting up traps and barriers to ensure the artifact remained protected from casual intruders or opportunistic treasure hunters. Whiskers, ever vigilant, patrolled the hallways and hidden corners, proving that even the smallest guardian could make a significant difference. Ellie took time each day to explore the tower and surrounding grounds, mapping every nook and cranny, retracing her grandfather's steps, and uncovering hidden compartments she hadn't noticed before. Each discovery was a reminder of the meticulous care Edward Walker had invested in preserving history and of the trust he had placed in her. One afternoon, while examining a particularly unstable section of the tower's foundation, Ellie found a small, sealed letter addressed to her in her grandfather's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, careful not to tear the delicate parchment. The letter read, "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, you have proven yourself worthy of the responsibility I once carried. Remember, the past is a guide, not a chain. Protect what matters, choose wisely, and trust in those who have proven their loyalty. You are stronger than you know, and you are never truly alone. Whiskers will guide you when you doubt, and history will speak to you if you listen. Guard well, my granddaughter." Ellie felt a lump rise in her throat. She held the letter to her chest, tears threatening to spill. Edward Walker's presence, though no longer physical, felt more tangible than ever. He had trusted her, and she would not fail him, or the artifact. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting the forest in shades of deep amber and shadow, they convened in the tower's main chamber. The artifact glimmered softly, resting safely in its protective casing. "We should celebrate," Gavin said, his usual bravado tempered with genuine admiration. "We survived Victor Reynolds, protected the artifact, and, well, didn't get ourselves killed." Dr. Harper chuckled, the tension of the past days finally giving way to relief. "Survived? More like passed a test of character." Ellie smiled, feeling the weight of triumph, responsibility, and history settling over her. "We did more than survive. We preserved something precious. And we've built a bond, a team, Whiskers included." She reached down to scratch the cat behind the ears, earning a soft, appreciative purr. That night, they sat around a small fire in the tower's main hall, sipping tea and sharing stories of past adventures, close calls, and the hidden wonders of history. Ellie felt a deep sense of belonging she hadn't known in years. The mountains, the tower, the artifact, they were all part of a living legacy, one that she was now a steward of. As sleep approached, Ellie walked to the window and gazed out over the Appalachian valleys, the mist curling around the mountains like a protective shroud. The tower had endured centuries of neglect, mystery, and secrecy. Now, with her guardianship, it had a new purpose. She thought of Victor Reynolds, the greed-driven antagonist who would inevitably return in some form. But she also thought of her companions, Dr. Harper's integrity, Gavin's evolving loyalty, and Whiskers' intuition. Together, they were more than capable of protecting the artifact and honoring the legacy of the past. Ellie knelt beside Whiskers, whispering, "We did it, little one. We've kept history safe, and we'll keep it safe for as long as we're needed." The cat blinked slowly, as if acknowledging her words, and then padded silently across the floor to settle atop the artifact's protective casing. Its gentle, rhythmic purring seemed to resonate with the soft glow of the object, as though reinforcing the harmony between guardian and treasure. In the days that followed, Ellie worked to establish the sanctuary she had envisioned, a private, secure place that combined historical preservation with the mystical reverence the artifact demanded. Scholars and historians, carefully vetted, were allowed glimpses under strict supervision. Gavin assisted with logistics, ensuring that only those with genuine respect for history and ethical intent could approach. Dr. Harper continued her meticulous documentation, providing context, guidance, and education to those trusted few. Ellie often wandered the surrounding woods, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a simple curiosity and a 75-cent purchase. The mountains whispered secrets, the wind carried stories, and the tower, once abandoned and forgotten, stood as a symbol of resilience, trust, and guardianship. One evening, as she watched the sun sink below the horizon, Ellie felt a gentle brush of movement against her leg. Whiskers, ever vigilant, had returned from one of his exploratory patrols. She knelt and stroked his fur, smiling. "We've done well, haven't we?" The cat purred, eyes half closed, and Ellie knew he understood. The artifact was safe, the legacy preserved, and the bonds forged through danger, moral choice, and shared responsibility had strengthened into something enduring. Ellie Walker, mountain woman, historian, and guardian, felt a profound peace settle over her. The tower, the artifact, and Whiskers were more than companions or treasures. They were partners in a shared mission that transcended time, greed, and the ordinary limits of human experience. And as night fell, stars glittering like scattered diamonds across the Appalachian sky, Ellie whispered a promise to herself and to the generations who would come after. "I will protect this legacy. I will honor the past, and I will ensure that history, magic, and moral responsibility endure, no matter the cost." The tower stood silent and steadfast, its crumbling stones now infused with purpose. Within its walls, secrets were kept, histories were honored, and a small mountain woman and her extraordinary cat safeguarded a treasure that was worth far more than any coin, because its true value lay in courage, integrity, and the enduring power of guardianship. Ellie knew that life would continue to present challenges, that Victor Reynolds or others like him might return, and that the artifact's mysteries would deepen with time. Yet she also knew that she and her companions were ready. Together, they had proven that the choices of a single individual or a clever cat could preserve the past, protect the present, and guide the future. And in that quiet moment, with the artifact glowing softly and Whiskers curled beside her, Ellie felt the profound satisfaction of a duty fulfilled, a legacy honored, and a story still unfolding, a story in which courage, loyalty, and moral clarity would always be the true treasures. Victor's figure loomed near the tree line, rigid with frustration, eyes fixed on the tower. The mist swirled around him like a shroud, lending an eerie stillness to the moment. He had underestimated Ellie once, but the fire in her gaze told him she would not bend. The cat, Whiskers, hissed softly, ears flattened, tail bristling, a warning that seemed almost supernatural in its precision. Every instinct in Ellie's body screamed at her. This confrontation would not be resolved by words. Ellie stepped closer to the artifact. Its carvings shimmered faintly, responding to her heartbeat. She could feel a pulse of energy, subtle but insistent, as if the object were alive in its awareness. The visions that had visited her over the past days, the cryptic guidance from Edward Walker, images of the tower in earlier centuries, and glimpses of futures where the artifact was exploited rose again, clearer and more insistent. She understood now that her decision here would ripple beyond the immediate danger. It would shape the legacy of the Walker lineage and perhaps influence those who came after. Gavin moved to stand beside her, a silent pillar of support. "Well, we've got your back, Ellie," he said, voice steady, though tension etched across his features. He had grown since arriving at the tower, his moral ambiguity tempered by the loyalty he now felt toward her and the artifact. Dr. Harper adjusted her satchel, ensuring protective coverings for the relic were secure, and gave Ellie a meaningful nod. "Trust your instincts. This isn't just about defending the artifact physically, it's about intent. Your integrity is its strongest safeguard." Victor took a step forward, lifting his voice in a taunt. "I warned you, Ellie. Step aside. No one needs to get hurt. But if you refuse, well, I've come prepared." He gestured to the two mercenaries at his sides. The pulse of greed in his stance was palpable, almost tangible, and Ellie sensed immediately that the artifact's protective aura would react violently to his approach. Whiskers sprang into action before Ellie could respond. The cat darted across the floor with a fluidity that seemed otherworldly, slipping through narrow gaps in the railing and landing squarely between Victor and the artifact. Victor's eyes widened, a flash of disbelief crossing his face. The device he had previously carried now lay uselessly at his feet, toppled by the cat's precision. Whiskers' gaze locked on Victor, unwavering, and the subtle hum of the artifact seemed to grow, resonating in harmony with Ellie's resolve. Over the next several days, they set about implementing their plan. Dr. Harper documented every detail of the artifact's history, cataloguing its inscriptions, physical composition, and the subtle effects it seemed to have on its surroundings. Gavin assisted in reinforcing the tower's hidden chambers, setting up traps and barriers to ensure the artifact remained protected from casual intruders or opportunistic treasure hunters. Whiskers, ever vigilant, patrolled the hallways and hidden corners, proving that even the smallest guardian could make a significant difference. Ellie took time each day to explore the tower and surrounding grounds, mapping every nook and cranny, retracing her grandfather's steps, and uncovering hidden compartments she hadn't noticed before. Each discovery was a reminder of the meticulous care Edward Walker had invested in preserving history and of the trust he had placed in her. One afternoon, while examining a particularly unstable section of the tower's foundation, Ellie found a small, sealed letter addressed to her in her grandfather's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, careful not to tear the delicate parchment. The letter read, "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, you have proven yourself worthy of the responsibility I once carried. Remember, the past is a guide, not a chain. Protect what matters, choose wisely, and trust in those who have proven their loyalty. You are stronger than you know, and you are never truly alone. Whiskers will guide you when you doubt, and history will speak to you if you listen. God well, my granddaughter." Ellie felt a lump rise in her throat. She held the letter to her chest, tears threatening to spill. Edward Walker's presence, though no longer physical, felt more tangible than ever. He had trusted her, and she would not fail him or the artifact. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting the forest in shades of deep amber and shadow, they convened in the tower's main chamber. The artifact glimmered softly, resting safely in its protective casing. "We should celebrate," Gavin said, his usual bravado tempered with genuine admiration. "We survived, Victor Reynolds protected the artifact, and, well, didn't get ourselves killed," Dr. Harper chuckled, the tension of the past days finally giving way to relief. "Survived? More like passed a test of character." Ellie smiled, feeling the weight of triumph, responsibility, and history settling over her. "We did more than survive. We preserved something precious, and we've built a bond, a team, Whiskers included." She reached down to scratch the cat behind the ears, earning a soft, appreciative purr. That night, They sat around a small fire in the tower's main hall, sipping tea and sharing stories of past adventures, close calls, and the hidden wonders of history. Ellie felt a deep sense of belonging she hadn't known in years. The mountains, the tower, the artifact, they were all part of a living legacy, one that she was now a steward of. As sleep approached, Ellie walked to the window and gazed out over the Appalachian valleys, the mist curling around the mountains like a protective shroud. The tower had endured centuries of neglect, mystery, and secrecy. Now, with her guardianship, it had a new purpose. She thought of Victor Reynolds, the greed-driven antagonist who would inevitably return in some form. But she also thought of her companions, Dr. Harper's integrity, Gavin's evolving loyalty, and Whiskers' intuition. Together, they were more than capable of protecting the artifact and honoring the legacy of the past. Ellie knelt beside Whiskers, whispering, "We did it, little one. We've kept history safe, and we'll keep it safe for as long as we're needed." The cat blinked slowly, as if acknowledging her words, and then padded silently across the floor to settle atop the artifact's protective casing. Its gentle, rhythmic purring seemed to resonate with the soft glow of the object, as though reinforcing the harmony between guardian and treasure. In the days that followed, Ellie worked to establish the sanctuary she had envisioned, a private, secure place that combined historical preservation with the mystical reverence the artifact demanded. Scholars and historians, carefully vetted, were allowed glimpses under strict supervision. Gavin assisted with logistics, ensuring that only those with genuine respect for history and ethical intent could approach. Dr. Harper continued her meticulous documentation, providing context, guidance, and education to those trusted few. Ellie often wandered the surrounding woods, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a simple curiosity and a 75-cent purchase. The mountains whispered secrets, the wind carried stories, and the tower, once abandoned and forgotten, stood as a symbol of resilience, trust, and guardianship. One evening, as she watched the sun sink below the horizon, Ellie felt a gentle brush of movement against her leg. Whiskers, ever vigilant, had returned from one of his exploratory patrols. She knelt and stroked his fur, smiling. "We've done well, haven't we?" The cat purred, eyes half closed, and Ellie knew he understood. The artifact was safe, the legacy preserved, and the bonds forged through danger, moral choice, and shared responsibility had strengthened into something enduring. Ellie Walker, mountain woman, historian, and guardian, felt a profound peace settle over her. The tower, the artifact, and Whiskers were more than companions or treasures. They were partners in a shared mission that transcended time, greed, and the ordinary limits of human experience. And as night fell, stars glittering like scattered diamonds across the Appalachian sky, Ellie whispered a promise to herself and to the generations who would come after. "I will protect this legacy. I will honor the past, and I will ensure that history, magic, and moral responsibility endure, no matter the cost." The tower stood silent and steadfast, its crumbling stones now infused with purpose. Within its walls, secrets were kept, histories were honored, and a small mountain woman and her extraordinary cat safeguarded a treasure that was worth far more than any coin, because its true value lay in courage, integrity, and the enduring power of guardianship. Ellie knew that life would continue to present challenges, that Victor Reynolds or others like him might return, and that the artifact's mysteries would deepen with time. Yet she also knew that she and her companions were ready. Together, they had proven that the choices of a single individual or a clever cat could preserve the past, protect the present, and guide the future. And in that quiet moment, with the artifact glowing softly and Whiskers curled beside her, Ellie felt the profound satisfaction of a duty fulfilled, a legacy honored, and a story still unfolding, a story in which courage, loyalty, and moral clarity would always be the true treasures. Victor's figure loomed near the tree line, rigid with frustration, eyes fixed on the tower. The mist swirled around him like a shroud, lending an eerie stillness to the moment. He had underestimated Ellie once, but the fire in her gaze told him she would not bend. The cat, Whiskers, hissed softly, ears flattened, tail bristling, a warning that seemed almost supernatural in its precision. Every instinct in Ellie's body screamed at her. This confrontation would not be resolved by words. Ellie stepped closer to the artifact. Its carvings shimmered faintly, responding to her heartbeat. She could feel a pulse of energy, subtle but insistent, as if the object were alive in its awareness. The visions that had visited her over the past days, the cryptic guidance from Edward Walker, images of the tower in earlier centuries, and glimpses of futures where the artifact was exploited, rose again, clearer and more insistent. She understood now that her decision here would ripple beyond the immediate danger. It would shape the legacy of the Walker lineage, and perhaps influence those who came after. Gavin moved to stand beside her, a silent pillar of support. "We've got your back, Ellie," he said, voice steady, though tension etched across his features. He had grown since arriving at the tower, his moral ambiguity tempered by the loyalty he now felt toward her and the artifact. Dr. Harper adjusted her satchel, ensuring protective coverings for the relic were secure, and gave Ellie a meaningful nod. "Trust your instincts. This isn't just about defending the artifact physically, it's about intent. Your integrity is its strongest safeguard." Victor took a step forward, lifting his voice in a taunt. "I warned you, Ellie. Step aside. No one needs to get hurt. But if you refuse, well, I've come prepared." He gestured to the two mercenaries at his sides. The pulse of greed in his stance was palpable, almost tangible, and Ellie sensed immediately that the artifact's protective aura would react violently to his approach. Whiskers sprang into action before Ellie could respond. The cat darted across the floor with a fluidity that seemed otherworldly. Ellie's mind raced. She understood now that brute force alone could not protect the artifact. She had to wield strategy, insight, and moral clarity. Stepping forward, she placed her hands lightly on the protective casing. The carvings glowed more vividly, almost reacting to her touch, as if acknowledging her guardianship. "Victor," she called out, voice calm but firm, "this is not yours to take. You've pursued greed, but this artifact responds to integrity. It will not allow Ellie slipping through narrow gaps in the railing and landings squarely between Victor and the artifact." Victor's eyes widened, a flash of disbelief crossing his face. The device he had previously carried now lay uselessly at his feet, toppled by the cat's precision. Whiskers' gaze locked on Victor, unwavering, and the subtle hum of the artifact seemed to grow, resonating in harmony with Ellie's resolve.